Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
I wasn't even planning to go on Hinge that week. Honestly, I was just sitting on my couch one night, bored and halfway through some leftover nachos when I started swiping. Not even seriously, just that kind of half-zoned out scrolling you do when you're too full to move and too awake to sleep. That's when I saw Araj. He had this really put-together vibe. His profile was clean, nothing cringy, and his pictures were safe, like business casual but make it charming. One hiking shot, one city skyline, one very obviously cropped group photo where a woman's hand was barely visible on his shoulder. At the time, I thought nothing of it. His bio said something like fresh start, looking for real connection, which I remember reading and thinking, okay, that's either someone's post-breakup therapy tagline or the beginning of a really good story. Turns out it was both. He messaged me first. Something simple, something about liking the same show as me. And we just kind of clicked right away. The combos weren't super deep at first, just a bunch of back and forth about movies. Favorite snacks, bad roommate stories. He said he was recently divorced, and I didn't blink at it. That felt normal these days. He made it sound super clean, like they had grown apart and moved on like adults. Even joked that they were still friendly and co-parented like pros. Honestly, the way he talked about it made it sound like he deserved a trophy for being so emotionally intelligent. We met up a few days after matching. He picked this cozy little spot tucked behind a bookstore downtown. The kind of place with low lights and too many che options. He looked like his photos. Slightly taller than me, really good posture. Kind of smelled like that cologne that's always advertised during the holidays. We talked for 3 hours straight. No phone checking, no awkward lulls, just good vibes. He told me about how hard the last year had been and how he finally felt ready to move forward. He asked me about my work, my family, what I wanted out of dating. Said all the right things, but not in a try-hard way. The next couple of weeks felt like a montage. Cute little check-ins, late-night calls, spontaneous coffee meetups. He always texted good morning and asked how my day was going. We sent each other photos of dumb stuff we saw on our walks. I remember thinking, wow, this could actually be something. And for someone who usually bounces at the first weird gut feeling, I was surprisingly all in. There were little things, though, like he was never free on Fridays or Saturdays. He said he had his kids every other weekend, which made sense, but even then he'd be oddly unavailable, like disappearing for entire 24-hour blocks. He never invited me to his place, which he explained by saying it was still a shared space until the logistics were settled. He also never wanted to FaceTime, said it felt too intense and preferred phone calls. Still, nothing was huge enough to set off alarms. Just little stuff that I told myself was probably normal for someone adjusting post-divorce. I even told my best friend that I thought this guy might be the most emotionally mature person I'd dated. Cringe in hindsight, I know. Then one night, I was scrolling through Facebook, not even looking for anything. I barely use it, but I had to find an old message from a family group chat. I ended up typing in his name just to see if he had a public profile. Total curiosity. That's when my stomach dropped. There he was, profile wide open. Not only was he married, he was still actively married. His most recent tagged photo. A family brunch from that same weekend. Him, his wife, 2 kids, a dog, matching outfits, the whole thing. The caption. Nothing like a lazy Sunday with my favorites. She tagged him with a heart emoji. I clicked through more photos. Christmas, beach day, a birthday party where he was feeding her cake. There were no signs of separation. No passive-aggressive captions. Just a guy fully playing house. I went numb. I stared at the screen so long it went dim and locked itself. I didn't message him right away. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight, like I had run a mile with no warm-up. So instead, I messaged her. It wasn't dramatic. I was calm. Just said something like, "Hi, I think there might be some confusion. I've been seeing someone named Araj who might be your husband. I didn't know he was married. I'm not trying to start anything, but I wanted to be transparent." I even included a screenshot of our messages just in case. She didn't reply until the next day, and when she did, it was not what I expected. She basically accused me of stalking them. Said she saw I had been digging into her family and that she was considering reporting me for harassment. That I was trying to insert myself into her life. I tried to respond, explain again, but she blocked me. Then I tried to call Araj. Straight to voicemail. His number didn't work anymore. His Hinge profile, gone. Deleted, like he vanished off the planet. It was the weirdest, most confusing few days of my life. I kept going back and forth between being angry, embarrassed, and just straight up grossed out. I had no closure, no answers. Just the realization that I had been a side character in someone's delusion. Like I got roped into a drama I didn't audition for. I kept replaying all those nights we talked and wondering how someone could be so smooth while lying so completely. I still don't know if she knew about me and just didn't want to deal with the truth, or if he had pulled this move before and she was done pretending. Either way, it messed with my head more than I wanted it to. Not because I loved him or anything, but because I felt like I'd fallen for the most convincing con job I've ever seen. And I wasn't even mad at him. Weirdly, I was mad at myself for not checking sooner, for ignoring the weird gaps, for being so quick to trust. Since then, I've been weirdly obsessed with spotting red flags before they happen. Not in a paranoid way, just like constantly scanning. And yeah, it sucks, because I liked who I thought he was. But I've also kind of accepted that some people are just really good at saying the things you want to hear. So this started in the weirdest way. I was lying in bed around 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, completely wrecked from a mix of insomnia and scrolling through the darkest corners of YouTube, like conspiracy videos, mukbangs, and clips of random people assembling IKEA furniture for background noise. You know that zone when you should be asleep but your brain is still kind of wired. That's when I opened the dating app. I wasn't expecting much. Mostly just bored. But there she was, Madaha. She looked like the kind of girl you'd see in an indie film about a quiet bookstore owner who secretly makes beats in her basement. Her pics were so vibey. Sunlight across her face, messy bun in a cafe, candid laughing shot in a market, holding a tiny cup of espresso. I swiped right mostly because I thought her whole profile gave effortless cool, which I fully fall for even though I know that usually means high maintenance disguised as casual. She matched with me the next morning, messaged first. I remember being weirdly excited. She was witty in this very deliberate way, like she didn't just type whatever popped into her head. Her messages felt like someone who curated every text with a little bit of mystery. Like even her typos looked aesthetic somehow. We talked about music, then pivoted into long chats about how everyone pretends to love hiking, but most people just want a photo and snacks at the top. That turned into her sending me playlists. I sent memes. She told me she liked that I wasn't too online. We talked for hours at night, and it got real fast, like time wore fast. We didn't meet in person until maybe week 3, because she said she was busy helping her cousin move cities and also had some family stuff. It didn't bother me. The convos felt solid, like the kind where you're excited just to talk, even without the physical stuff. I sent voice notes. She sent photos of food she made. She said she was getting over a bad breakup and wasn't ready to rush into anything, which I respected. Honestly, that made it easier to just talk. There was a comfort to it. I started to feel like I actually knew her. We finally met at this outdoor food truck event. She looked different, not bad, just not like her pictures. I remember having this tiny moment of confusion. I thought maybe she just looked different without filters or lighting. But it was enough that I noticed. Her face shape wasn't exactly the same, and her voice was also deeper than I remembered from the voice notes. She said she was just super tired and that her face gets puffy when she doesn't sleep. I brushed it off. I didn't want to be that shallow guy who cares about looks. The date itself was chill. We laughed a lot. She brought me this weird spicy lemonade to try and said it tasted like pain, but in a good way. We sat on a curb and made up fake backstories for random people walking by. It felt real. Comfortable in that way that doesn't feel performative. But something was still off. She kept mentioning her cousin, like a lot. Her cousin was moving here soon. Her cousin had the same earrings. Her cousin said she should try this one taco. Her cousin took some of her photos. It started to click after the third hangout. We were lying on a picnic blanket and I looked through her Instagram, just out of curiosity, and I realized the tagged photos didn't really line up. The photos she posted of herself looked different when other people tagged her. In the tagged pics, she looked like the girl I'd met, but the ones she had on her profile were clearly someone else. It hit me hard that she had used her cousin's photos for her dating app profile, and some of her Instagram too. I reverse image searched one, and yeah, her cousin had her own page, and she looked like the girl in the profile I matched with. I sat with that for like 2 days, not sure if I should bring it up. I talked to a friend about it who said I should run, like fully bounce, but I didn't. I was too curious, too far in. I needed to know why. So I confronted her, kind of gently, just asked her straight up if those pictures were really her. She didn't even deny it. She just stared at the ground and said something like, I was going to tell you, but we already started getting close and I didn't want to ruin it. She said she used her cousin's photos because she didn't think people would swipe on her. That she felt invisible and her cousin always got attention, so she borrowed some confidence. I remember just sitting there completely unsure what to say. It wasn't even anger at that point. It was more like my brain was trying to rearrange everything I thought I knew about the past 2 months. Like, was anything she told me true? Were those stories hers? Were the feelings real? She kept saying the connection was real. That she wasn't faking who she was, just how she looked. Which sounds messed up, I know, but part of me understood. That sad part of you that sometimes wants to be someone else for a bit. The issue was I had fallen for someone who didn't exist. And then, get this, she asked me not to end things. Said we'd already built something meaningful. That now I knew the real her, maybe it was even better. And I didn't know what to do. I just kind of sat there, eating sun-melted mochi ice cream, wondering how the hell I ended up in this very weird indie film plot with someone who literally catfished me with her own blood relative. I didn't block her or ghost her or anything dramatic. I just slowly stopped replying. She messaged a few times, asking if we could talk more, that she missed how easy it was with me. I left her on read. Sometimes I still think about how much effort she put into building that connection, how carefully she chose her words, the playlists, the photos, the stories. She wasn't some bot or scammer. She was just someone trying to be liked in the most backwards way possible. And it sucks because the connection was good, but it wasn't real. And I think I needed it to be real way more than she did. That was Madiha, or I guess the girl pretending to be Madiha's cousin. This one's probably the weirdest story I've ever had to explain to anyone because it starts like a regular guy seems cool thing and ends with me finding out I was basically part of a YouTube project. Yeah, a whole actual experiment. But at the time, I had no clue, obviously. I just thought I met a guy who was a little quirky but chill. So Riyadh and I matched on this niche app my friend made me try. It was meant for creatives and curious minds, which sounds fake, but honestly, I was tired of the regular apps. His profile had photos of him sketching in a notebook, making coffee in one of those fancy slow pour kettles, and wearing wireframe glasses like he was in a Wes Anderson movie. It gave low-key film student energy, and I was kinda into it. He messaged me first, saying he liked my book quote bio. It was something dumb like, I judge people by their snack preferences. He said his was chili mango. I said mine was sour cream and onion chips, which he found aggressively specific. We had this back and forth where the vibe was nerdy but kind of flirty. I liked that he wasn't trying too hard. We met for boba the first time. He brought a sketchbook. Said he liked to draw while people watched him because it made him feel like he was performing the act of thinking, which I didn't even understand but somehow found kind of cute. He asked me about my worst date ever, and when I told him about a guy who brought his mom to the second date, Riyadh laughed like it was the best thing he'd ever heard. Over the next few weeks, we kept hanging out. Walks in weird parks, little indie movies. Deep combos about how people don't really know what they want. They just pick things that feel familiar. He always asked oddly specific questions like, if I disappeared, how long before you'd notice? Or do you think people fall in love with patterns or people? And because I overthink for fun, I just thought he was one of those intense artsy types who likes poking people's brains. He started bringing up red flags in this really casual way. Like one day, he told me he used to ghost people on purpose to see if they'd double text. Then laughed and said, don't worry, I grew out of that. Or he'd show up late and say he forgot he made other plans. And when I looked annoyed, he'd smile and say, are we already fighting? Cute. Stuff that was off, but not like deal-breaking. I chalked it up to him being kind of socially weird. I even told a friend he had charming chaos energy. I'm rolling my eyes now, trust me. One night, we were walking back to his apartment after a really good dinner. He asked if I thought he was honest. I said, yeah, because why not? He said, I have a confession, but you'll laugh. I was like, okay, spill. He said, I've been filming parts of our relationship. Not like in a creepy surveillance way, but for this creative project I'm working on. I laughed, thought he was joking. Then he pointed at the small pin camera on his tote bag strap, just right there, hidden in plain sight. I was frozen, literally just stood there staring at it. He said he was making a YouTube series, something like, How long do people ignore red flags? He was documenting his interactions with different women, 5 total, apparently, and seeing at what point they confront him, leave, or start adapting to the weird stuff he did. He said I was the third girl, and the one he was most surprised by because I engaged with the discomfort instead of avoiding it. Like, what? He said I'd signed up for it in a way because I was on this creative app, and part of that was being open to experimental relationships. He even had this smug monologue about social contracts and human behavior and how everything is content now. I just kept staring at him, trying to figure out if this was a prank or an elaborate excuse for being a garbage person. I asked if the other girls knew. He said yes, eventually. That once each case study reached a certain point, he revealed it and asked them to sign a release form. I asked what if I didn't. He said, then your footage won't be used. Ethically, I have to respect that. Ethically, he used the word ethically while standing in front of me with a literal secret camera recording my face while I processed that I had just been a lab rat in some dude's ego project. I didn't scream or cry. I just told him I was leaving. He said, this was probably the last date anyway. The arc was wrapping. Like it was a Netflix episode and I was just one more plot point. On the train ride home, I didn't even look at my phone. I just stared at the reflection in the window, wondering how the hell I ended up as girl number 3. I kept replaying every convo, every weird joke, every comment he made that I brushed off. All of it was scripted, or bait, or tested. The next day, he sent a message. A literal email, not a text. An email with the subject line, debrief and thanks. Inside was a long note about how grateful he was that I played along unknowingly, that my reactions were raw and thoughtful, and that I had demonstrated the emotional elasticity he was researching. There was a link to his YouTube channel. It was private for now. He said I could preview the draft before it went live if I wanted to see myself through a new lens. I didn't open it. I deleted the email. A week later, I checked the channel. It was public. Comments were off. The videos were titled things like Date 1, Avoidant Behavior Test, and Date 2, Minor Chaos and Reaction. I didn't see mine, but I'm guessing it was waiting in the wings. Sometimes I wonder if he ever did this to someone who really cared. Like someone who thought they'd found something real and then realized it was just another case file. I didn't love him or anything, but it still messed with me. Because for a while, I thought I was in something strange but genuine. Turns out it was just content. That was Riyadh. The human experiment still kind of makes my skin crawl. I met Amira on a language exchange app of all places. My original plan was to brush out on my Urdu because I had this fantasy of impressing my grandma the next time I visited, but I quickly figured out that most people on that app weren't really there for language learning, or at least not only for that. Amira had a cute profile picture, just her sitting in a sunny room with a book in one hand and a cat curled up on her lap. Her bio said she liked reading sad books and watching bad movies. We started chatting about how both of us could barely remember high school grammar, but somehow remembered random lyrics from childhood songs. She was super chill from the start, dry humor into weird documentaries, and not shy about roasting me. Our chats gradually shifted from language stuff to just everything. We started texting outside the app, then voice notes, then FaceTime. She had this soft, warm voice and a varied expressive face. Her eyebrows did half the talking. I remember thinking she was the kind of person you could have an entire conversation with just through glances. It felt natural fast, but not in a forced way. We started dating a few weeks later. She lived in the next city over, so we met halfway the first time. It was just coffee, nothing elaborate, but it went really well. She didn't act nervous or stiff like a lot of first dates. She was playful, sharp, made fun of the people who brought laptops to the cafe and just opened spreadsheets like they were in a Netflix movie. She asked me stuff like what scared me most about growing older, which somehow didn't feel heavy at the time. Her energy made things feel lighter than they probably were. By our third or fourth hangout, she was already calling me her person. She said she hadn't felt this close to anyone in a long time. She wasn't clingy, just intense. Like, she'd text me paragraphs about how meaningful our connection was. At first, it felt good. I mean, who doesn't want to feel chosen like that? But then it started to get weird. She asked a lot of health questions. Not like casual, do you work out kind of stuff. More like, have you ever had surgery? Do you take medication daily? Do you have any family history of chronic illness? I joked once that she sounded like a life insurance agent, and she said, dead serious, I just think health changes how people love. I didn't get what she meant until we were hanging out at my place one night just watching trash TV. During a commercial, she randomly said, you know, the way you talk about your life, it kind of feels like you've been through something serious, like you've faced death before. I was confused but kind of flattered, like maybe she thought I was deep or something. So I told her about a blog post I'd written years ago when I was dealing with a weird health scare. It wasn't anything terminal, just a misdiagnosis that had me freaked out for a month before doctors cleared it up. That's when she got quiet, like still staring at the wall quiet. And she smiled, almost like in relief, and said, that explains it. You've touched the edge. I laughed thinking she was being dramatic, but she wasn't. She got all serious and said that she believed people who've been close to death love differently, that they see the world with more urgency, that they don't take love for granted. I was like, okay, you're kind of poetic, I guess. But the way she said it gave me a weird feeling I couldn't place. Then came the reveal. A few days later, she sent me this article about people with terminal illnesses finding more authentic love. I skimmed it, thinking she was just on one of her random internet rabbit holes again. But then she sent another, and another, and finally, a whole-ass podcast episode where she casually added, this one reminds me of us. I finally asked her what she meant, and that's what she told me. She said she only dated men who were transient, her word, because they loved better. I asked what she meant by transient. She said men with terminal illnesses, or people who'd had major near-death experiences. People who knew how temporary things were. I thought she was being metaphorical again, so I said, you mean like emotionally transient? But she shook her head and said no, like medically. As in, people who were actually dying. She said she used to date guys from a support group she volunteered at. That they were more romantic, more in tune with emotions, more present. I just stared at her, like really looked at her to see if she was joking. But she wasn't. She was so calm about it. Said she wasn't exploiting anyone, she was loving them fully during their limited time. She actually said, they loved me like every day was the last, and I loved that version of them. It took me a second to connect the dots. That post I'd written years ago, she thought I was dying. She thought I had some terminal illness I hadn't told her about, and she picked me thinking she was signing up for a short but intense love story, like some real-life tragedy romance fantasy. I said, wait, you think I'm dying? And she didn't answer for a long time. Just looked at me with this weird, gentle face, like she was trying to figure out how to phrase it. Finally, she said, I thought maybe you were just too strong to admit it. That's when I lost it. Not angry, just this surreal, slow-motion kind of reaction. I told her I wasn't sick, that the thing I wrote about was old, over, not even that serious, and she just sat there like she didn't know what to say. She looked more disappointed than embarrassed, which was the part that stuck with me. She left that night quietly. No scene, no apology. She just said, I guess I read it wrong. We didn't talk again. She unfollowed me a few days later. Deleted her profile on a language app too. It was like she vanished. Sometimes I think about her. Not in a romantic way, more like a weird curiosity. Like, what kind of headspace do you have to be in to chase people who are dying because you think their love is more pure? And how many other people did she meet thinking they had an expiration date? That was Amira, the girl who thought I was dying and was kind of into it. I met OB on this travel app that wasn't even meant for dating. It was supposed to help people connect over trips, like finding someone to explore a new city with or split an Airbnb. But let's be real, people used it like a softcore Tinder. I signed up because I was planning a trip to Vancouver, and I figured, hey, why not meet someone local who could show me around and maybe keep things casual? OB messaged me about 2 days after I made my profile. He said he was from Toronto but moved out west for the views and the peace. His profile was full of scenic stuff, and piking, making bonfires, holding coffee with two hands like he was in a commercial. He had one of those faces where you can't tell if he's attractive or just really confident, but it worked. I asked him where to get good cheap food in Vancouver, and he dropped a whole list like he'd been prepping for that moment. We started texting more outside the app and eventually just skipped the travel part. I wasn't even in Vancouver yet, and he suggested maybe we just video chat first to see if we got along. He had this relaxed, surfer-style energy, like the kind of guy who says vibes way too seriously. He was into photography, worked remotely, and said he loved long train rides because they made him feel like a character in a novel. That should have been the first flag. I ended up not going to Vancouver, but we kept talking anyway. A couple weeks in, we were basically in daily communication. Voice notes in the morning, goodnight texts, random video chats while we were cooking. He'd always talk about how hard it was to find people who weren't superficial. Said dating apps were soul-crushing. I agree, obviously. I told him I liked that he wasn't trying to rush anything, and he said he was just happy to have met someone who felt real. Eventually, he said he was coming to my city for a few weeks. Said he had a photography project lined up and would be staying with a friend. I offered to show him around. We met in person about 5 days after he got here, and it felt just like it did on the phone. Easy. He had this laid-back way of being that made even boring stuff feel kind of warm. We went to a flea market, walked around, got matching mango popsicles for some reason. He made fun of the way I held mine like a microphone. We started seeing each other a lot, not officially dating, but close. He even came to my place a few times, cooked pasta like he was on a cooking show, stayed the night, left his hoodie. We never really talked about what we were, but it felt like something. My friends liked him. My roommate said he had gentle swatter energy, which is weirdly accurate now that I think about it. Then things got blurry. Like one day he casually mentioned needing help filling out a form. It was super last minute and he said it was for a work permit thing. I didn't think twice. He said it was just a basic thing where someone local vouched for him temporarily. I signed it. Didn't even read it closely. He thanked me like I saved his life, kissed my forehead, and said, "One step closer." About 2 weeks later, he got distant, like really distant. Said he had a lot on his plate and needed space to think. I figured maybe something happened with his work stuff or family. He started missing calls. Took forever to respond. Then one day he just coasted. Full on, no contact. No, this isn't working. No weird fade out. Just silence. I tried messaging, calling, emailing. Nothing. I even checked the travel app. He deleted his profile. I was mostly just confused. Not heartbroken, just sitting there like, what just happened? Then a few weeks after that, I got a letter from immigration. Not even kidding. Apparently, the form I signed wasn't just a vouch for a friend thing. It was part of a spousal sponsorship package. A whole ass document saying I was in a committed, genuine relationship with him. I had unknowingly signed paperwork to help him apply for permanent residency. I remember rereading the letter 5 times, thinking it had to be some kind of mix-up. But nope, it had my name, my address, even a photo of us from a street fair, which I now realize he probably asked a stranger to take specifically for that file. I never even knew a photo like that existed. I tried contacting immigration to explain, and they basically said I needed to file a statement saying it wasn't a real relationship or else I could be held responsible for any of his future legal or financial obligations. Like, actually responsible. So yeah, not only did he ghost me, he used me. I was a pawn in his immigration hustle. And I felt for it because he made himself seem like this chill, earthy guy who just wanted connection and slow walks and spicy che. I looked him up online after that. Found an old Reddit thread where someone described a guy who sounded exactly like him. Same name, same background story, same hobbies. Doing the exact same thing in another city a year earlier. Ghosted someone after getting his paperwork signed. I wouldn't be surprised if he was already doing this to someone else now, smiling and saying, "You're different from other people I meet." I still think about how much effort he put into being likable, like it wasn't random. He targeted someone, built trust, charmed their friends, slow played the relationship, and dipped the second the job was done. That was Obi. Visa secured. Mission complete. Shumi I met on a dating app that was branded as for serious connections only, which makes it extra funny in hindsight. You had to answer like 30 prompts to build your profile, and half of them were stuff like, what is your ideal emotional response to conflict? And describe your core values in under 100 characters. The kind of app that makes you feel like you're applying for a relationship the way you'd apply for grad school. Her profile stood out, not because it was flashy, but because it was just really well written. She had these super thoughtful answers about vulnerability, mentioned she was into psychology, and included a playlist of songs that feel like recovery. I know you know what that means, but I was intrigued. Her photos were clean, warm lighting, one selfie with no filter, and one candid one of her laughing with what looked like a teacup in her hand. She looked like the kind of person who journals aggressively. We started messaging, and it was deep from the jump, like she asked me what emotional patterns I inherited from my parents in the first 3 messages. No high or wide, just straight into attachment styles. I was kind of into it though. I'd just gone through a pretty brutal break and was on that whole let me become emotionally literate wave, so it felt refreshing to meet someone who wasn't afraid to go there. She said she was a coach, relationship stuff mostly, and that she worked with clients trying to unlearn avoidant habits and create space for intimacy. She didn't seem salesy about it though. If anything, she almost never brought it up. I only knew because I asked what she did, and she described her job like it was sacred. Honestly, I liked that she was so passionate. She sent voice notes where she sounded super gentle but also confident, like the kind of person who could talk you through a meltdown and also organize your closet while doing it. We started talking constantly. Every morning she'd send me one of those little how's your energy today check-ins. At night we'd share voice memos, sometimes 5-6 minutes long. She had this way of talking that made everything feel significant. Like even if she was just talking about a weird dream she had or a conversation with her barista, she made it sound like it tied back to some big emotional lesson. After about a week of talking, she asked if I wanted to try something intentional. I thought she meant exclusive or something, but she meant doing intentional connection practices. She sent me this shared Google Doc where we write daily reflections. Stuff like, what fear came up for you today? Or what would you say to your inner child right now? I mean, yeah, it was a lot. But again, I was in that open and vulnerable mode, and it felt kind of nice having someone walk me through it. Then things got a little weird. She'd sometimes reference things I said, word for word, like she'd quote a phrase I used 2 days earlier, down to the exact pause or phrasing. I figured she just had a good memory. Then she started saying stuff like, you remind me of so many of my clients. And I'd laugh thinking she was making a joke. But one day I made a joke back, something like, I should be paying you for all this insight. And she just said, you kind of are. I was like, huh. She said, well, you're contributing to my curriculum. Real-time case studies help me shape my course materials. I paused, asked what she meant exactly. That's when she told me, like, very casually, that she'd been documenting our convos, not just for her own processing, but for content. As in, she was using chunks of our chats in her coaching material, not like sharing my name or anything, but paraphrasing our messages, sometimes quoting things I said to show patterns in emotionally unavailable men. She said I was so textbook that it would be a waste not to use it. I asked if she was serious. She said yes. She'd even drafted a module based on a specific thing I said about feeling emotionally shut down after my last breakup. The quote was something like, it's not that I don't care, it's just that I go numb and don't know what to do with other people's feelings. She'd built a whole lecture slide around it. I wasn't even angry at first. I was just confused, like was I her boyfriend or her homework? She said, I don't see a difference between love and learning. I wish I was joking. She kept trying to explain it like it was collaborative. I should feel proud that I contributed something valuable. That the connection was real, but it was also informative. She even offered to show me the slide deck. I didn't ask for it. She said, look, I didn't lie. I told you I was a coach. I just didn't think it would be a problem unless you were uncomfortable being seen. And that line, being seen, made me realize she genuinely thought this was some kind of noble thing. Like she was doing me a favor by turning me into a teachable moment. I started pulling back after that. No big blow up. I just didn't reply to the reflection doc. Stopped answering the check-ins. She messaged a few times asking if I was contracting emotionally, which I guess is coaching speak for ghosting. Eventually, she sent one last message that said, it's okay if this phase is complete. Thank you for the data. Yeah. Thank you for the data. Like I was a spreadsheet and not a person. I unfollowed her, unmatched, deleted the doc, deleted our voice notes. I still think about how weird it was to be dating someone who was literally repackaging our conversations for other people to study. And the wild part is, she really didn't think it was messed up. To her, it was just research. That was Shumi, the life coach who turned our connection into curriculum. Okay, so Imran was one of those matches that felt casual at first. Like, I didn't go in expecting anything deep. His profile was kind of bare, but not suspiciously so, just simple. A picture of him eating fries, one looking in a suit at a wedding, and a blurry concert pic with that generic caption like, guess where this was lol. His bio just said, looking for someone who can out-eat me. Bonus if you like scary movies. It didn't scream serial dater, but it also didn't scream emotionally available. We matched on a Wednesday. He messaged me within 10 minutes. Just a dumb icebreaker about fries versus tater tots. We started chatting, and it was chill. No over-the-top flirting, just some back and forth about food, horror movies, and what our last Google searches were. His was how long to microwave rice, which made me laugh more than it should have. He had this laid-back energy that made everything feel easy. We went out about 5 days later. Simple plan, coffee and a walk, nothing dramatic. He showed up in a hoodie, smelled like fresh laundry and gum, and had this relaxed confidence that was either charming or suspicious depending on your mood. We got along weirdly well. Talked about old cartoons, bad family vacations, and our mutual hate for loud chewers. He made me laugh without trying too hard. At one point, I remember thinking, okay, this guy might be a low-key gem. The next couple of weeks were full of that early-stage dating energy. Texts in the morning, late-night calls, random memes in the middle of the day. We had a few more dates. One at this rooftop bar where he taught me how to play a dumb dice game with sugar packets, and another where we tried to cook something together and burned it but still ate it. He was funny, sweet, a little chaotic, but in a way that felt genuine. The only weird thing was that he never seemed fully present. Not in an obvious I'm hiding something way, just distant sometimes, like during conversations he'd zone out, or he'd ask me something I already told him. Once I asked how his week was, and he said something that totally didn't match what he told me 2 days before. I figured he was just forgetful or bad at multitasking. I didn't make a thing of it. Then, on a random Saturday morning, I got a message from someone I didn't know. Just a DM on Instagram from a girl named Tara. She said, "Hey, I know this is random, but I think you've been seeing my ex Imran. If you have a second, I think we should talk." At first, I thought it was a scam or some catfish situation, but I checked her profile. Real. Tons of pics. Mutuals, not a fake. I replied cautiously. Just said, "Yeah, I've been seeing him. What's up?" She sent me a paragraph. Basically, she and Imran had broken up about 4 months earlier, and since then, he'd been dating girls nonstop. She didn't care about that part. What she wanted me to know was that he had a pattern. He'd meet someone new, post random vague stories with them, never showing faces, and make sure she saw them. Every time she stopped responding to him, he'd start dating someone else immediately just to get her attention again. She said I was the third girl this had happened to since they split. Same timeline, same sudden romantic energy, same vanishing after she started engaging again. At first, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to. I mean, he wasn't acting that shady until I started connecting the dots. That day we hung out and he was super distant. She'd posted something cryptic the night before, a quote about missing the wrong people, the random love song he sent me out of nowhere. One of the lines was in her Instagram bio. I went back and checked. It was like watching a bad mystery movie where all the clues were in plain sight and you just didn't see them until someone pointed them out. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to see what he'd do next. Sure enough, a few days later, he started acting weird. Canceled plans, slower replies, said he was feeling off. I waited, and then he ghosted me. Not full ghost, just a slow fade, like still liking my stories but not replying to messages. That gross little digital breadcrumb trail that makes you feel like you're crazy for noticing. I finally messaged him. Just said, "Hey, if you're seeing your ex again or using me to get her attention, at least have the decency to say it." He left me on read, then blocked me. So that was it. All late night calls, the sugar packet dice game, the inside jokes about loud chewers. It was all background noise while he waited for his ex to bite. I wasn't even a person in that story, just a prop. Tara and I kept talking for a bit after that. She sent me screenshots from when he did the same thing to the girl before me. Literally same timing. Same pattern. She said she was done now. Said she wasn't falling for it again. I still think about that sometimes, how he was able to make people feel chosen while not actually choosing anyone. How casual it all seemed. Like we were characters in a script he'd already written 3 times before. That was Mrnightmare. The guy who treated relationships like Instagram stories. Brief, curated, and meant for someone else to see. I matched with Jubbly on a Saturday night when I was home doing absolutely nothing except eating cold noodles and regretting every decision that led me to still being single in my late 20s. She popped up on the app with this super bubbly profile, like her photos looked like screenshots from an energy drink commercial. Bright colors, constant smiles, little captions like spontaneous soul with a playlist for every mood, and on a mission to find joy or dumplings, whichever comes first. She was cute, really cute. One of those people who seems like they have a theme song playing behind them in real life. She messaged me with, "Okay, be honest. Pancakes or waffles, and why is your answer wrong?" It was corny out by a bit. We ended up talking for hours that night. She asked a million questions, rapid fire style. Everything from what's your dream place to live if money wasn't real, to when was the last time you cried on a bus. I was like, okay, intense but fun. We made plans to grab sushi the next Tuesday. I got there a little early and she literally skipped up to the table. Like, actual skip. I laugh out loud. She just had this bright, performative energy. Almost like she was playing a character, but not in a fake way, more like she was doing life in all caps. The date was fun. She was charismatic, made the server laugh, asked the couple at the next table if they were on a date too. She'd made a bet with me about who could eat more wasabi without crying. I lost badly. By the end of it, I was smiling way more than I usually do around new people. We kept going out. One date turned into 2, then 3, then 4. And every single one felt like she was curating it for a camera that wasn't there. We didn't just get coffee. We had an espresso adventure. We didn't just walk around downtown. We did a spontaneous street art tour. She'd pull me into little videos sometimes too. Like short clips on her phone where she'd be like, "Day 11, say hi." And I'd awkwardly wave while holding bubble tea or whatever. I figured she was just doing some TikTok journaling thing. Everyone's documenting everything nowadays. I didn't mind. Honestly, I kind of liked the energy. It pulled me out of my routine. Made the world feel slightly more cinematic. But the weird thing was, she always referred to our time together in vague terms. Like, if I asked what we were, she'd be like, "We're just exploring the moment," or "Let's just see where the energy takes us." I was cool with that at first. No pressure. I wasn't trying to jump into anything heavy either. Then around our 5th or 6th date, I noticed she started bringing up numbers, like casually. She'd say things like, "You're such a strong number," or "You'd definitely be in my top 10. I asked what she meant, and she just smiled and said, "I'll tell you later." A few days later, I was on Instagram and saw one of her reels pop up, probably because we were tagged in a story together once. I clicked out of curiosity. It was a reel titled 30 Dates in 30 Days, Take 17, when the guy actually has a personality. My stomach dropped. The clip was literally a montage of our last date, like our full evening. Shots of our food, our awkward selfie on the train platform, a voiceover of her saying, "You never know when you'll meet someone worth keeping, but maybe I'll see him again after the challenge." It had background music and everything. Edited, hashtags, captions. I watched it twice just to make sure I wasn't overreacting. But yeah, there I was. Date number 17. Not even a name, just a slot. I didn't message her right away. I sat with it for a bit, wondering if I was just being dramatic, but then I saw the rest of the series. All 30 days, 30 dates, 30 people, all carefully documented. Different outfits, different vibes, different men. I read the captions. She called it a self-love experiment disguised as romance. Said she wanted to redefine dating and decentralize attachment. I don't even know what that last one means. When I finally texted her, I just said, "So I was date 17. She replied with, "Ah, you saw. Haha. Yeah, but don't worry, you were one of the good ones." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a ha. I asked why she didn't tell me. She said she didn't want to bias the outcome, and that authentic reactions only happen when people don't know they're being watched. I told her I wasn't a lab rat. She replied with the heart emoji, and you're still part of something beautiful. We didn't talk again after that. I kept checking her page for a while, just out of weird curiosity. The video got a bunch of likes. People in the comments were like Coles, and wish I had your bravery. And date 17 is cute though. It made me feel strange, like I'd been in something that felt like dating, but was actually just content. Like I got turned into a storyline without signing up for the script. And the thing is, I don't think she meant to hurt anyone. I really think in her head, she was doing something profound. She probably really believed she was exploring human connection or whatever. But for me, it was just hollow. Like finding out your best moment in a movie was just background noise in someone else's plot. That was Ghibli. High energy, camera ready, and emotionally distant in the most enthusiastic way possible. I met Muktakim on Bumble. His profile was all outdoorsy and clean cut, like he was on a mission to convince people he spent every weekend hiking, but also knew where to get the best shawarma in town. His photos were solid, nothing too polished, nothing too cringy. A couple nature shots, one of him petting a random goat, and one mirror selfie that honestly should have been illegal but somehow worked on him. We matched during a boring weekend late fall when I was already burnt out from work and swiping more out of muscle memory than actual hope. He messaged me something chill, like you look like someone who drinks oat milk but still eats fries. It made me laugh. I responded. That was the start of it. Our chats were effortless. He had this goofy, dry sense of humor that I liked, and we kept bouncing off each other like we'd been talking for weeks. He was really open too, not in a trauma dump way, but just straightforward. Said he was originally from out of state, moved here for work, had a complicated relationship history, but was ready for something that wasn't a chaotic situationship. That made me feel safe-ish. It's wild how just hearing someone say they're tired of drama makes you believe they actually mean it. We met up at this hole-in-the-wall dumpling place on a rainy Tuesday. He was late, but not super late, just enough to make me mildly annoyed. But when he showed up, he had that energy that makes it hard to stay mad. He was warm, funny, a little spacey. Talked fast, but made eye contact. Said things like, okay, be honest, do I have cilantro in my teeth? We talked for 2 hours straight. It didn't feel like a date. It felt like catching up with someone I already knew. After that, we hung out regularly. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes more. We never put a label on it, but the energy was very coupley. He'd come over. We'd make frozen pizza, lie around, and talk about random stuff, like whether ducks have regional accents or if phones have ruined sleep forever. It wasn't fireworks, but it was steady, easy, comfortable in a way I didn't even realize I needed. The weird thing was, he never wanted to meet any of my friends. I invited him to stuff and he always had excuses. Said he wasn't big on groups, had social fatigue, was trying to stay grounded. I didn't push it too hard. Honestly, I liked having him in this little pocket of my life that was just ours. He also never mentioned his past relationships. I asked once and he said, long story. Let's just say I'm not a villain, but I'm also not the hero. I rolled with it. And one day I got a random text. Not from him. From a number I didn't know. The message said, "Hi, I think we need to talk. This is Muktakim's wife." I froze. Full body stillness. I thought it had to be a prank. I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared at it, reading it like the meme would change. Eventually, I wrote back, "What?" She replied right away. Said she found my number on his phone. Said I wasn't the first girl he'd been seeing, but she figured it was time to finally meet one of us. And then, this is where it gets completely unreal. She invited me to dinner. Like, an actual dinner. At their place. To meet the family. I didn't reply. I called him instead. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. The next day he finally texted me like nothing happened. "Hey, sorry I disappeared yesterday. Long story. Hope you're good." I said, "Your wife texted me." He didn't deny it. Just sent one word, "Yeah." Then, "It's not what you think. We're poly. She's just going through a lot." I lost it. Not yelling or anything, just stunned. I asked why he never told me. Why he let me walk into this thinking I was the only one. He said, I wanted to wait until we were solid before explaining. People get weird about it too fast. I told him people get weird about being lied to, not about polyamory. And he said the most unhinged thing. She actually likes meeting the people I date. It's part of how we stay open but connected. If it makes you feel better, she said, you seem sweet. Like, what? How did she say that? Was she reading our texts? Listening in? Watching me? What did seem sweet even mean? I blocked him after that. Didn't go to dinner, obviously. But I kept thinking about how normal everything had felt. Like, how easy it is to believe someone when they just act like they have it all together. And the whole time I was just an extra puzzle piece in someone else's cell. The wildest part is that I don't even think he saw it as betrayal. I think in his head, he genuinely believed he was being fair by not scaring me off too soon. That he was protecting the connection or whatever. But you can't protect something real by hiding reality. That was Muktakim. Poly, secretive, and casually inviting women into family dinner like it was some twisted welcome party. I've met Raz on a music app. Yeah, a music app, not even a dating one. It was one of those apps where you match with people based on your playlists and favorite artists, which sounded cute and harmless enough. I had just made a new playlist called Mild Heartbreak with Synth, and within like a day, she liked it and messaged me something like, respect the tame Impala to Robin transition. And just like that, we started talking. Her profile said she was a music snob, liked guys who could make good tea, and that she ran a podcast about love, chaos, and late capitalism. I didn't even process the podcast part properly at first. I just thought it was one of those things everyone says they do but don't actually update after 3 episodes. She seemed cool. Her messages were kind of sarcastic and sharp in a way that made you feel like you had to be on your toes, but also made you want to keep replying. We started messaging almost every day. She'd send me weird voice notes of her walking home from work, rambling about how people on the train chew too loud or how capitalism ruins birthdays. It sounds annoying, but it wasn't. It was kind of fun. Like eavesdropping on the thoughts of someone who was clearly way more self-aware than she let on. I found myself wanting to hear from her even when she was just complaining about bad espresso. We met for drinks at this artsy basement bar that had like 12 chairs, a bartender who looked like he only listened to MF Doom. She ordered a weird drink with pepper in it. I made fun of her for it. She called me basic for getting a cider. We sat there talking about how music is just emotional math and why dating apps should require people to upload their grocery receipts as proof of character. That kind of night. After that, things moved fast, but not in a traditional dating way. We weren't doing the whole label thing. We weren't official. But we were seeing each other often, texting daily, sending playlists like it was a love language. She never said, I like you directly, but she'd say things like, you'll make my brain tired, and in her world, that felt like a compliment. The first weird moment came when I stumbled across a clip of her podcast by accident. One of my friends, who didn't even know I was seeing her, sent me a link like, hey, this girl sounds like someone you'd date. And she was right. It was literally her. The episode was called The Guy Who Thinks He's Emotionally Available. It had just dropped the day before. At first, I thought, no way this is about me. But then she said something in the intro like, he made me a playlist titled Almost Something, which, by the way, is the most accurate name for a man I've ever dated. I made her that playlist. That was mine. I kept listening. She didn't use my name, but everything else. Yeah, that was me. She talked about our combos, the drinks we got, the bar with the MF Doom bartender. She played clips of voice notes, my voice notes, like actual snippets from messages I sent her. She edited them into a segment called Emotional Men Say the Darndest Things. She even added sound effects like sad trombones, fake violins, a laugh track. It was like being turned into a joke while being completely serious. I sat there on my bed, holding my phone, hearing my own voice talking about growing up with distant parents, while a canned audience laughed in the background. I texted her immediately, just said, are you serious? She didn't respond for hours. Then she sent back, it's not that deep. No one knows it's you. I said, I know it's me. She replied, that's because you're emotionally attached to your own narrative. The rest of us are just studying the behavior. What? Like, who says that? Studying the behavior. Am I a bug in a glass jar? A project? I told her it felt messed up, that I'd never consented to being part of her little comedy psychology breakdown. She said I was overreacting, that I didn't get her art. Then she blocked me. I found out later she'd been doing this with multiple guys. Her whole podcast was just repackaged conversations. Every guy she dated was a segment. She even had a running joke where she gave each one a fake name and a diagnosis. I was playlist boy, avoidant with soft boy tendencies. I deleted the app. I deleted the playlist. I even deleted most of my old voice notes. And I still kept thinking about how she never really asked me anything deeply personal without following up with, "Can I use this?" But it didn't sound like a real question. It sounded like a joke. I never thought she meant it. What got me most wasn't even the public part. It was realizing she'd been treating our convos like content the whole time. That while I was sending voice notes and trying to connect, she was cutting clips. While I was overanalyzing her texts at night, she was probably editing my audio and writing punchlines. That was Rads. Smart, funny, magnetic, and always recording. This ads guy came into my life during one of those chaotic periods where I was trying to juggle work, family drama, and a sleep schedule that had fully given up on me. We matched on this app that was geared toward young professionals, which honestly just meant people who took selfies in co-working spaces and wrote things like "grind now, rest later" in their bios. His profile was super curated, clean, professional photos, a short caption that said "tech consultant," "coffee enthusiast," always building. He looked like the kind of guy who wore all birds without irony. The kind that had a Google Calendar color-coded for no reason. I wasn't even that interested at first, but I swiped right because I figured, hey, at least he probably had a job. He messaged me a few hours later. Something clever, I think. I don't really remember what it was, but I do remember liking the way he messaged. He wasn't trying too hard. He didn't call me queen or say anything weird about my eyes. Just asked questions, listened, joked in a way that made me feel like I was talking to someone who actually had a brain. We talked about dumb tech trends, childhood TV shows, and how people in the startup world treat burnout like a badge of honor. I liked that he had opinions. I liked that he seemed balanced. We met pretty quickly. Coffee date at this place with way too many plants and not enough chairs. He looked exactly like his pictures, which is rare. Tallish, always slightly smiling, eyes that looked like they knew stuff but weren't gonna say it out loud unless you asked the right way. He wore a basic black tee and jeans, no flashy stuff. I remember thinking he looked like he worked at a company that made apps for other apps. He talked a lot about his job, how he was building something game-changing in the health tech space. He didn't explain it too much, said it was early stage and confidential. But he said he'd just gotten back from a networking event in the Bay Area. I didn't question it. He definitely sounded like someone who'd just been at a networking event. We started hanging out more. Nothing too serious, just dates here and there. But it felt solid. He'd always pay for stuff, never made it weird. He remembered what kind of lats I liked and always had something random but thoughtful to say. I never saw his place, though. He always had a reason. His roommate was sick, or apartment being fumigated, or he was between places because of a lease shift. It didn't feel sketchy at the time, just like someone who moved around a lot for work. But there were little things, like how he always had to leave by a certain time, never stayed the night, never really texted after 9 p.m. He said he was trying to be more intentional with screen time, and how he always wanted to meet at cafes or public places, never too close to where he supposedly lived. He also carried his laptop everywhere like it was glued to him, but I never actually saw him open it. It didn't really hit me until one day we were walking near this parking lot, and he stopped in front of this beat-up van and got this awkward look on his face. I asked if everything was okay, and he said, yeah, just tired. Then, when I started walking ahead, I turned around and saw him open the door to the van. Like, actually get into it. I asked if that was his van, and he looked embarrassed but tried to laugh it off. Said it was temporary while he was in between apartments. I asked what that meant, and he got real quiet. Then finally, he admitted it. He was living in the van. He said he used co-working spaces to shower, to work, to meet people, to feel normal. He had a gym membership at a 24-hour place nearby. He said he used to work in tech but had been laid off months ago. The project he kept talking about was something he'd started on his own, but it wasn't funded. He was broke, job hunting, and basically living like a mobile startup founder without the startup. He told me he didn't lie, just didn't lead with the full truth. He said people judge too fast. That if I'd known, I probably wouldn't have even gone out with him. And maybe he was right. But I was just stunned. Not even because of the van, but because of how normal he made everything feel. How much effort he put into appearing like he had it all together. I asked why he didn't tell me earlier. He said he was going to. That he was waiting for the right time. That he wanted to be seen as a person first, not as a situation. He said, if we connect, what does it matter where I sleep? And I didn't have an answer. I sat with it for a few days, tried to process it without judging. But it was hard. Not because of the financial part, but because of the deception. The way he built a version of himself that was technically true, but practically false. He didn't catfish me, he just created a character so well that I forgot to question the gaps. We talked one more time after that. He apologized. Said he understood if I didn't want to keep seeing him. He looked tired. He said he was applying for jobs every day, that he was trying, that he didn't want pity. Just someone who didn't run. But I couldn't keep going with it. I told him I needed to take a step back. That I respected the hustle, but I didn't like feeling like I'd been sold a version of something that wasn't there. He nodded. Said, that's fair. We didn't talk again. That was Ed's. The tech guy who lived in a van and built an image like a startup pitch deck. Clean, strategic, and missing all the messy parts. I met Gogi on a wellness app. Yeah, one of those mindful dating things where they make you answer a bunch of deep questions like, what does vulnerability mean to you? Before you can even see someone's face. At the time, I thought that was kind of refreshing. Everyone else was playing dating games, and this felt like people who maybe wanted something a little more human. Spoiler alert, it was still a game, just with incense and better lighting. Gogi's profile hit that exact mix of mysterious and emotionally woke. Her photos were minimal, like barely their makeup. Half of her face hidden in shadows, wearing linen stuff, holding a match alive with two hands like she just manifested it. Her answers to the app's prompts were deep but vague. I'm seeking connection that honors energy. My heart has always been louder than my thoughts. At first, I couldn't tell if it was genius or gibberish, but I was intrigued either way. She messaged me first, said my profile had grounded energy. I didn't even know what that meant, but I pretended to. We got into this long, flowing convo about breathwork, emotional chemistry, and which fruit matched our personalities. She said she was a pomegranate because she's sweet but guarded. I said I was a mango because I peak in the summer and get weird near the pit. It made her laugh. We moved fast in a slow way, if that makes sense. Like, we didn't talk 24/7s, but when we did, it was intense. Long voice notes. Conversations about inner child stuff. She'd send me meditations. We even journaled together once over a video call. I thought, damn, maybe this is what healing is supposed to look like. It didn't feel romantic in the traditional sense. It felt like something sacred. That's the word she used a lot. Let's keep this sacred. Our first in-person date was at a farmer's market. Of course it was. She wore this flowy dress that made her look like she was just drifting through the crowd. Bought weird vegetables I'd never heard of. Made me drink something called fire cider that tasted like regret and horseradish. But again, the vibe was strong. We sat in the grass afterward and talked about how capitalism ruins intimacy and how modern love has lost its tenderness. I ate a sandwich. She made a bracelet out of grass. It was a time. After a few more hangouts, things got closer. She invited me to this connection circle she was hosting. It was a mix of breathing exercises, holding eye contact, and talking about feelings in a group of strangers. Honestly, it was overwhelming, but she seemed so in her element that I rolled with it. That night after the circle, she asked if I considered myself financially rooted. I thought she meant like stable. I said, yeah, I'm doing all right. She smiled and said, that's rare. So many people don't understand the sacred flow of energy through money. I was like, okay. She started talking about abundance dynamics and how some people radiate giving and others are called to receive. I figured it was just more spiritual language. I didn't ask questions. Then, over the next few weeks, small things started happening. She'd ask if I could cover dinner just this once, because her bank app was down. Or she'd send me links to things she wanted, crystals, bath salts, random books, and say, I thought of you when I saw this. She'd never directly asked me to buy them, but the implication was kind of obvious. One time she sent me a Venmo request for $44 labeled rebalancing session, and when I asked what it was for, she said it was for a massage she'd gotten that helped her process our connection. I didn't even know how to respond. When I started questioning it, she flipped it. Said I was assigning shame to natural energy exchanges. That money is just a form of attention, and that I was clearly blocked in my abundance chakra or whatever. I told her it was starting to feel like I was just being used. She said, use? No, invited. I decided to Google her. Not something I normally do, but the red flags were stacking. Turns out she had an entire online persona I didn't know about. She ran a private group for something called intentional fin-sub alignment, a niche kink community where women, mostly self-described spiritual leaders, engaged in financial domination. I clicked around, recognized her in the photos, saw the captions, things like, a true masculine must learn how to worship through giving. When you release control of your finances, you open the door to real love. It hit me like a cold splash to the face. I was part of it, not even accidentally. She had been grooming me for it. Slowly, with all the spiritual language and talk of energy and connection. She didn't want love. She wanted a sponsor. I confronted her. Told her I'd seen her site, that I knew what was going on. She didn't even flinch. Just said, now that you've seen me fully, do you still choose to connect? Like it was some kind of test. I said no. She nodded, said, not everyone is ready, and logged off our call. A week later, I saw a screenshot of my old messages in one of her posts. No name, just the words, a previous energy exchange who was not ready to ascend. Like it was a failed student or something. That was Gogi, the wellness girl who wrapped kink in sage smoke and called it alignment. Sid was one of those guys who sneak up on you because they're so normal at first, they almost feel forgettable, but not in a bad way. Just in a finally, someone who's not trying too hard kind of way. His profile was minimal, 3 photos, a sentence that said former philosophy major, current breakfast enthusiast, and a Spotify link with a playlist held things I think in airports. I figured he was probably a little pretentious but maybe interesting, and I was right on both counts. He messaged me first. Something simple. I like your taste in music. Do you alphabetize your playlist or just vibe it out? I laughed. We ended up talking for a couple hours that first night. Music books, why people fall for people who remind them of their parents. Casual. We met up after just a few days, coffee and a walk. I remember thinking, okay, finally, someone who shows up on time and knows how to hold a conversation without making everything weirdly flirty or intense. He had this calm voice and talked with his hands, not in a dramatic way, just like he was always drawing invisible diagrams in the air. We hung out 3 more times over 2 weeks. There wasn't a strong romantic spark, but it was chill and consistent, and he felt solid. I told my friend, he's the kind of guy you could just read books next to and not feel like you have to perform being interesting, which is rare. It wasn't fireworks, but it felt peaceful. Then one night I couldn't sleep, just restless scrolling through social media, skipping between random accounts, and I ended up on Reddit. No idea how I got there, but I found myself on this dating thread where people shared horror stories and strange dating patterns. I searched a few keywords just out of curiosity, nothing too deep, and on a whim, I typed in Sid's name. I didn't expect anything. It's not like he had a weird name, but there it was. A Reddit account with his same exact handle from Spotify. A post about dating. Multiple posts. Pages. Years of logs. At first, I wasn't even sure it was him, but the writing style was familiar. Then he posted a story that was word for word the conversation we had about existential dread and cereal on our second date. I froze. He had been logging every date he went on, not just journaling it for himself, but publicly, reviewing women like they were restaurants. Each post had a title. Curl from the bookstore app. 6/8 would have been higher if she didn't interrupt so much. Marketing girl who called herself intuitive 5/10 asked too many questions about my parents. Me, 32M, hitting update log number 74, met someone from a mindful music app, Seems emotionally stable, but hard to read. That one was me. I knew it immediately. He even described my shoes. He rated us on things like conversation flow, emotional calibration, physical vibe, and exit strategy probability. He had a scoring system. I was listed as potential long game, not romantically intense, but possibly companionable stable. I felt like I had been reviewed like a coffee grinder on Amazon. The worst part wasn't even that he posted about me. It was that he'd done this for everyone. Literally, every girl he dated for the past 3 years. He'd answer questions from strangers about what to say on second dates, what tactics worked best to get past emotional armor, and he even gave other Redditors tips on how to create safe-feeling environments without over-investing emotionally. It was like he was doing a science fair project on us. I didn't even confront him right away. I just went silent for a couple days. He messaged me, said, "Hope everything's good. I had fun the other day." I stared at that text for like 5 minutes before replying with a screenshot of the Reddit post. He responded with a long-ass paragraph, not an apology, a justification. Said it was a living document he started during the pandemic to process relationships, that he anonymized everyone and never meant for anyone to find it, that it was part personal reflection, part sociological mapping. That line made me want to scream. He said, "I never said anything cruel. I'm just trying to be honest with myself about what works and what doesn't. Like that made it better." I told him it was gross. He said I was overreacting. He tried to say it was no different from venting to a friend or keeping a journal. I told him friends don't rate your trauma processing speed and post it online for karma. Then he blocked me, like I was a problem. I checked a week later. His account was still up, still active, still logging dates, probably still assigning points to the way someone held eye contact or laughed too loud. Sometimes I wonder how many other people he's written about. How many of them are walking around thinking they had a cute date with a quiet, thoughtful guy, while he's out here dissecting them like frogs in a middle school lab. That was Sid. Spreadsheet in human form, emotions turned into data, and connection boiled down to a review section with bullet points. So, Sylvie was one of those matches that felt totally random, but somehow right. It was a Thursday night. I was eating cold toast because I forgot about it in the toaster, watching old episodes of Kitchen Nightmares when we matched on Hinge. Her profile was chaotic in the best way. One photo was her holding a pigeon. Another was her dressed like a pirate for Halloween. Her prompts were all jokes that made zero sense, like, "My love language is confusing people at the grocery store," and "I once cried in a Panera Bread, and it changed me forever." I was immediately interested because she just seemed unpredictable in a fun way. I messaged her first with, "So what exactly happened at Panera?" And she sent me a voice note of her laughing and said, "Wouldn't you like to know, other boy?" Which was a reference to some viral video. That was it. That's how it started. Our conversations were ridiculous, never serious. We made up fake business ideas like a dating app for people who only communicate in SpongeBob quotes. She told me she didn't believe in bed frames and that socks were a scam created by Big Sock. It was all nonsense and hilarious and kind of refreshing. Most people try to impress you with deep thoughts or curated selfies. Sylvie was just weird and I liked it. We met after a week of texting. She suggested a paint-your-own pottery place. I said yes. We made horribly ugly mugs, covered in what looked like toddler scribbles and inside jokes. Then we got smoothies and sat in our car talking for hours. She had this energy that made you feel like the world was a sitcom, and she was the main character who knew the camera was there. She told me all about her twin sister. Said her name was Shelby. They were identical but emotionally opposite. She described her like some villain in a telenovela. Super serious type A, only more neutrals. Meanwhile, Sylvie wore glitter eyeliner and mismatched earrings, and said things like, "I'm not sad, I'm just time-traveling emotionally." I asked if Shelby lived nearby, and she said no, she was in another city doing big corporate brain things. It became kind of a running theme. Every convo, she dropped some funny or dramatic fact about Shelby. After a month of dating, things started getting a little more real. Still fun, but with more depth. She told me she liked how comfortable I made her feel. Said she felt like she could just exist around me. I liked hearing that. I told her the same. She said I was a cool shape in her emotional Tetris game, which again didn't make full sense, but I took it as a win. Then came the night that everything flipped. We were supposed to meet for dinner. She canceled last minute, said she had a headache. I said no problem. A couple hours later, I was walking downtown and randomly saw her. Or at least I thought I did. Same face, same posture, same way of walking. But this version of her was wearing a full beige suit, hair pulled back, holding a giant tote bag and talking seriously on the phone. Like, not Sylvie. Not even close. I stared for a second, confused, and she looked up and made direct eye contact with me. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled a weird little smile, like someone who wasn't supposed to be caught. She hung up the call, walked over, and said, "Hey, I'm guessing you're / my name." I said, "Wait, you're Shelby." She nodded, looked weirdly entertained. I was just standing there like, what the hell is happening? She said, "Yeah, this is a long story." Then she actually said this. "You've been dating Sylvie, but that's me. I'm Sylvie. I'm Shelby. We're the same person." I thought she was joking. I literally laughed and waited for her to say, "Just kidding," but she didn't. She explained that there was no twin. Sylvie and Shelby were characters she'd made up in college as a joke between her and a friend. Over time, it just became a bit she'd do in dating. If she wanted to be serious and mysterious, she was Shelby. If she wanted to be chaotic and quirky, she was Sylvie. She used them depending on the vibe of the guy. With me, she went full Sylvie. And then just kept it going. Built out a fake twin. A whole identity. And I'd never questioned it. She even had a second Instagram for Shelby just in case anyone looked. I just stood there, fully dumbfounded. Like I just found out I've been dating a YouTube prank channel or something. I asked, "Why though?" She shrugged. Said it started as a bet with her friend, who could keep the fake twin story going longer without the guy figuring it out. She kept it going for over a year with other people. But apparently, I was the one who got closest to finding out, and she was kind of impressed. She said she thought I'd be mad, but also maybe I'd appreciate the creativity. I told her I didn't know what I was feeling, because the person I liked didn't exist. But also she kind of did. I mean, it was still her, just wrapped in a cartoon. She apologized, not in a super emotional way, just like someone who got caught stealing fries off your plate and finally admitted it. Said she didn't expect to actually like me, and then once she did, it got harder to break character. We never met again after that. I didn't block her or anything. I just stopped replying. She sent one last message. "For what it's worth, Sylvie liked you. Shelby did too." That was Sylvie, or Shelby, or both. The girl who dated me as part of a long-running twin prank and almost pulled it off. So Inti and I matched on this app that's mostly filled with people who are way too serious or way too unserious. Like half are listing their star signs in 7 emojis, and the other half are talking about 401k in debt consolidation. Inti fell somewhere in between. His profile felt thoughtful, but not preachy. One of his prompts was a fact about me that surprises people, and his answer was, "I once rewrote my therapist's homework into a spreadsheet, which I didn't know how to read at first." Funny. Worrying, both. We started talking, and it was low-key great. He wasn't pushy. He asked good questions. Stuff like, "What does safety look like to you?" And "What's a memory you think about way more than you should?" Which sounds deep, but actually didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like he was trying to dig, more like he just lived in that space. He told me early on that he'd been in therapy for the last year after a really messy breakup, and that he was doing the work. Honestly, I respected that. I'm tired of people who act like mental health is this optional thing you do after your life collapses. He seemed to be genuinely putting effort into himself. He didn't love bomb. He didn't ghost. He responded like a normal human. That alone put him in the top 10%. We met after a couple weeks of solid talking. Went for a walk around this park that had more geese than it should legally be allowed to have. He brought me coffee exactly how I liked it, and we talked for 2 hours about the weird gap between who we think we are and how people actually see us. He said he used to think he was hyper-rational, but his therapist told him he was just scared of feeling things he couldn't control. I remember thinking, wow, okay, this dude's actually introspective. I didn't even need to translate his emotions for him like I've had to do with every emotionally constipated guy before. We kept seeing each other. A few dates here and there, texts every day, voice notes. He liked asking me to rate my mood from 1 to 10 and then explain the number, stuff like that. I started to get into it. It felt like we were building something intentional, not just hanging out because we were bored. Then one night we were at his place watching this dumb documentary about people who try to befriend wild animals, and he got up to grab snacks. While he was in the kitchen, I noticed his journal on the table. I wasn't trying to swear, but the cover said, "Therapy Homework, Weekly Assignments." I laughed out loud, because he literally mentioned it once, and I didn't know it was a real thing. He walked back in and saw me holding it and froze for a second, not in an angry way, more like I'd caught him mid-breath. I said, "This is real," and he kind of winced, smiled, and said, "Yeah, that's actually kind of what all this is." I was like, "What do you mean all this?" And that's when he told me. He said part of his therapy plan was to start dating again, that he had to set clear goals and try to build a connection with someone as a form of emotional reactivation, that he needed to prove to himself and his therapist that he could engage with someone new without falling into the same old patterns. I said, "Okay, but what do you mean this is therapy?" He explained that he created a spreadsheet, a literal spreadsheet, with columns, dates, metrics. He had a whole system to track his responses, my reactions, the dynamic. Apparently, he'd been journaling about every single interaction we had and discussing it in therapy. Every call, every date, every text where I said something that made him feel activated. I was the subject of the homework, the only one. He said I was the only match he'd had an actual conversation within weeks, and that his therapist told him if someone seemed worth it, he should follow through until the connection either deepened or destabilized. I stared at him, like, okay. Part of me was weirdly flattered. He picked me for the healing journey. Cool, I guess. But also what? He said he didn't tell me because he didn't want to contaminate the interaction. That if I knew, I'd act different. He needed it to be raw, real, unfiltered. I said, "You mean unconsenting?" He didn't argue. I asked if he was even interested in me or if I was just a test subject. He paused, too long, and then said both. That somehow made it worse, like I wasn't even his person, I was his person-shaped practice dummy. He said, "I didn't expect to like you this much. That wasn't part of the plan," which sounded romantic in theory, but it felt more like a glitch in the system than an actual compliment. I didn't even know what to say. He sat there, looking almost proud of how deeply he tracked his own behavior like it proved something, like love could be audited. I left that night quietly, no fight, no big dramatic scene, just told him I needed to think. A couple of days later, he sent me a long message saying how grateful he was, that he learned so much through our connection, that I helped him identify triggers he hadn't understood before. It read like a report, like a thank you note at the end of a clinical trial. I didn't reply. The guy who dated me because his therapist told him to, and documented every moment like it was homework on feelings. Roxy and I matched during one of those stretches where I told myself I was just looking for something casual, but deep down I was totally open to it turning into a whole situation. Her profile was cute, like actual cute, not trying too hard cute. She had this giant messy bun in every photo, wore oversized shirts, and had a caption that said, "If you can guess my comfort show, I'll buy you lunch." I guessed new girl and was right. She said no one had ever gotten it on the first try. I felt like I'd unlocked a bonus level. Our first few chats were full of jokes and movie references. She had a dry sense of humor and didn't do that thing where people force banter. It just flowed. She was quick-witted but also super chill, like the kind of person who texts you, "Lol, that's wild," and actually means it. She told me early on she was a single mom, which didn't faze me. She mentioned her son was 13 and a little too smart for his own good, but that he lived with his dad most of the week. I appreciated how upfront she was. I didn't get the vibe that she was hiding anything, and that made her feel real in a way most people don't on these apps. We went out for dinner the following week. She showed up in beat-up Vans and a hoodie with some random cartoon on it. I showed up with zero expectations and left thinking, oh no, I like her. She was funny and warm and kind of weird in the best way. She told stories with her whole face, constantly switching accents for characters in the middle of conversations. I was smitten and trying not to look smitten. I remember her saying she was done playing games and that dating as a mom made her more direct. I respected that. We kept seeing each other. 2 weeks in, she introduced me to her favorite taco truck like it was a sacred ritual. A week after that, she asked me if I could help her carry a dresser from Facebook Marketplace. I didn't mind. In fact, I liked that she included me in stuff that wasn't fancy. It felt like I was being folded into her life. We weren't moving too fast, but it definitely felt like we were headed somewhere. Then came the third date, the one I still think about like a glitch in the simulation. She invited me to a mini golf place. Super random, but kind of perfect. I showed up wearing this goofy visor I'd bought as a joke, and she lost it laughing. Said I looked like someone's stepdad who owns too many flashlights. We were vibing. Everything was light and easy until she said, "I hope it's okay I brought someone." I thought she meant a friend, maybe her sister. I was like, sure, the more the merrier. She turned around and waved over a kid, tall, curly hair, headphones around his neck, who walked up like he'd been summoned to a meeting. It was her son. Her actual teenage son. She introduced us like it was the most normal thing in the world. "This is Jamie. He wanted to come hang out." I shook his hand and gave that awkward smile adults give when they're trying not to be weird around kids. He said hey, shrugged, and looked around like he already regretted coming. We played mini golf, the three of us. It was fine. Kind of weird, kind of fun. Jamie was quiet, borderline sullen, but not rude. I tried to joke with him and got a couple smirks. Roxy seemed totally at ease, like this wasn't out of the ordinary, like she had done this before. After the game, we sat on a bench and ate soft pretzels. She casually said, "So, Jamie, what's your first impression?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. He looked at her, then looked at me, then said, "He's cool. I don't hate him." Roxy nodded like she was getting a Yelp review. Then she turned to me and said, "That's pretty high praise. He hated the last one." I blinked. I said, "Wait, am I being evaluated?" She laughed and said, "Well, kind of. I told him I wouldn't keep seeing someone unless he got a good vibe. I trust his instincts more than mine at this point." She said it so casually, like it was normal, like bringing your kid on your third date was a standard part of the process. I sat there chewing my pretzel slower and slower, trying to figure out how I'd ended up on a surprise parent-teacher conference about my own personality. After we left, she texted me, "Thanks for being cool about today. Jamie actually liked you. That's rare." I didn't reply right away. I needed to sit with it, because the whole thing just felt off. Not because I was anti-kid, but because I wasn't told. I wasn't asked. I was presented, like an option, a pitch, a vibe check. I texted her the next day and said I liked her, but I wasn't sure I was ready to be evaluated by someone who's not old enough to vote. She said she got it, but also that she couldn't risk wasting time on someone her son didn't approve of. That she needed them to be a package deal early on. That if someone wasn't cut out for that, she wanted to know sooner than later. And honestly, I kind of respected it. But I also knew I wasn't the guy who wanted to be sized up by a teenager before I even knew someone's middle name. We drifted after that. No fight, no drama, just a few texts that faded out. I saw a selfie she posted weeks later, her and Jamie at an escape room. Different guy in the background. Guess he passed the vibe check too. That was Roxy. Funny, smart, a little impulsive, and completely unbothered by social rules. She didn't want a boyfriend. She wanted a future stepdad with decent mini-golf etiquette. Adam was the kind of match that sneaks up on you. You're really looking for something serious, just swiping out of boredom while waiting for pasta water to boil, and then boom, there he is. His profile was weirdly polished, but not in a fake way. Like it had personality, but also structure. His bio said writer collector of odd facts, semi-professional overthinker. His photos were clean, not influencer clean, more like he knew his angles and had decent lighting. One was hidden in a bookstore, another sitting on a rooftop at sunset, and the third with a dog that he clarified is not mine, but I wish. He messaged first, something super specific like, "Do you think people who are chronically late deserve a second chance or just shorter invitations?" Which made me laugh because I'm always late. I replied something equally sarcastic, and that turned into a 2-hour convo about time perception, awkward hugs, and which fictional characters we secretly think we are. He said he was probably more of a washed-up child detective type. I said I was a minor character in my own story. We clicked instantly. It wasn't just flirty, it was smart. Quick, weird in a way I liked. We met after 4 days of talking. Coffee turned into dinner, turned into us walking around the city until it got cold. He was effortlessly charming. Not smooth, just comfortable. He asked thoughtful questions, made me feel like the only person in the room. We didn't kiss that night, but it felt like we'd known each other longer than a week. I left thinking, okay, this one might be different. The next few weeks were solid. We kept seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week. I never had to guess if he was interested. He texted first, made plans, followed through. He had this way of making you feel like you were in on some inside joke with him all the time. We'd lie on the couch and talk about random stuff like how certain foods have 0 personality, looking at you, zucchini, or whether people are born cool or just practice indifference until it looks natural. He told me he worked in tech-adjacent stuff, writing for startups, consulting on brand voice. He always had his laptop with him, and he was always typing something. Said he was working on a personal project too, something creative, but he didn't go into detail. I didn't push. People always have half-baked book ideas or screenplays. It didn't seem weird. But little things started to stack up. For one, he always had a different version of the truth depending on who he was around. I'd hear him on the phone with someone from work, and he'd sound like a different person entirely. Not fake exactly, but curated. Also, he always had way too many phones, like I noticed 3 different ones in his apartment over time. He said he tested mobile apps, which kind of made sense, but they all had different cases, and once when I asked about it, he brushed it off like I was being paranoid. The weirdest part came when he started asking me oddly pointed questions. Like he'd ask me what I thought about men who switch personas depending on who they're dating. Or if I'd ever dated someone who lied for fun, just to see if they could get away with it. Once he asked, if someone made a character out of you, would you be mad or kind of flattered? I thought he was just being theoretical. I joked that I hoped I'd at least be written with a good haircut. He smiled and said, you'd be one of the main ones. That line stayed in my head. Then one afternoon, I was on Reddit, because of course I was, and I saw someone post in a dating subreddit about this guy in their city who was allegedly writing a book based on his interactions with women from dating apps. The post said he was using burner accounts to meet women of different types: woke, traditional, spiritual, corporate, chaotic, etc., and was cataloging their responses, conversations, and emotional shifts for a book he claimed would explore modern femininity through a male lens. I didn't want to believe it was him, but the details were too close. The name Adam wasn't used, but the description of the guy, mid-30s, writes full-time, bounces between different dating apps, takes lots of notes, oddly good listener, vaguely tech-related jaw, keeps multiple phones. One girl even said he'd asked her how she'd feel if her texts ended up in a book someday. I started spiraling. I searched his name with book and dating project. Found nothing concrete. But then I remembered he once left a Google Doc open on his laptop while I was using the bathroom. I hadn't looked then. I wasn't soupy like that. But now I was curious. So I waited until he went to grab takeout one night and peeked. There it was, the document. The Adam Project, notes by archetype. I clicked. It was organized, creepy organized, sections labeled by date, platform, and even personality tags like romantic idealist, low-key cynic, emotionally fluent, high control. I found myself under the tab warm ambivalent, which made me want to throw up. There were quotes, things I'd actually said, not just paraphrased, quoted, with analysis under them, like, greater than I think I'm just trying to be less careful this time. Good opening line, shows vulnerability without losing control. Possible signal of past betrayal, but unclear if it's been fully processed. He had a whole paragraph about how I responded to eye contact. Another on how I processed silence during arguments. I felt like I'd been dissected. When he came back with food, I sat there like a statue. I asked him what the Adam Project was. He looked up, didn't say anything for a long second, then just said, "You weren't supposed to see that yet." Yet. Like it was something he had planned to tell me eventually. After the research was done. After I'd unknowingly contributed to a full chapter. He said it wasn't malicious. That it was a creative project. That he changed names and blurred details. That it was about themes, not people. I asked how many others there were. He wouldn't give me a number. Said some of them knew, kind of. That it wasn't illegal and it wasn't about shaming anyone. It was about capturing the current moment in dating. I told him I wasn't a moment. He said I was more than that. You were one of the real ones, which somehow made it worse. I walked out and never responded to him again. He texted a few times, left me a voice note saying he hoped I understood the intention. I didn't reply. That was Adam, the charming guy who dated women not to connect with them, but to categorize them, all for a book he hadn't even started writing yet. Megan and I met on a dating app that I deleted and re-downloaded at least 6 times before. One of those nights where I told myself I was just going to check something real quick, and 2 hours later I was sitting in bed, half asleep, swiping with the intensity of a bored raccoon. Her profile was solid, no weird filters. Her answers were confident but funny, like she didn't take herself too seriously, but also wasn't trying to come out like a clown. She had one photo in a leather jacket standing in front of a mural, and another where she was drinking out of a coconut with sunglasses on inside a supermarket. Her vibe was kind of chaotic cool, if that makes sense. Like someone who doesn't read instructions and still ends up building the thing better than you. We matched and started talking the same night. She had this sarcasm that was sharp, but not me. When I told her I was watching a bad cooking show, she said, "Nice, I love background noise with false stakes." I laughed way harder than I should have. We ended up talking until 1 a.m. about whether or not anyone actually likes truffle oil, the best snack to cry eat, and which movie villains had valid points. We met up a week later at this all-day brunch place she picked, where the music was too loud and the chairs were all mismatched on purpose. She walked in wearing Doc Martens and this oversized hoodie that said, "I hate brunch, but I love chaos." She told me she wore it just to see if the waiter would flinch. He did. The date was great. No awkward pauses. No interview energy. She had a way of making the stupidest topics feel interesting, like debating the ethics of pineapple on pizza like it was a court case. I left feeling buzzed in that subtle way, not in love, but like I wanted to see what came next. We started seeing each other casually. She'd send me voice notes instead of texts, always mid-walk or while doing her nails. Our conversations were half serious, half nonsense. She'd be like, "What are your top 3 emotional wounds?" And then immediately follow it with, "Also, do you think ghosts wear clothes?" She was unpredictable in the way that keeps you checking your phone more than you want to. About 3 weeks in, she suggested we go on a double date. Said her friend had just gotten out of a long relationship and needed a night out. I didn't think much of it. Said, "Sure, let's do it." We went to this game bar downtown that had neon lights, sticky tables, and overpriced cocktails served in mason jars. Megan was already there with her friend when I arrived. Her friend's name was Jordan. She was cool too, kind of quiet, but funny once she warmed up. We all played air hockey, ate pretzel bites, made fun of the karaoke happening in the corner. It was a good time, but something felt weird. Every time I said something, Megan and Jordan would exchange these quick little glances. So, but not that subtle, like they were silently keeping score. Jordan kept asking me oddly specific questions too. Like, what would you do if someone texted you 10 times in a row? Or would you rather date someone who's too intense or not intense enough? At first, I thought it was just small talk with a twist, but it started to feel like I was being quizzed, evaluated, like there was a right answer I didn't know. Later that night, after we left the bar, I asked Megan what that was all about. She hesitated for a second, then laughed and said, "Okay, you're gonna be mad, but just wait." I was like, "What am I waiting for?" She said, "So, Jordan and I had a bet." At that point, I was already bracing. She told me that she and Jordan had been arguing over who was better at reading guys on apps. Like, who could predict how a guy would act based on his messages and early behavior. They made a bet. They'd both swipe, pick someone, and try to win them over in 3 weeks. Then do a double date to compare notes. Not in a cruel way, she said. More like a friendly competition. I just stared at her, like I couldn't tell if I should laugh or walk into traffic. I asked, "So this whole thing was just a game?" She said no, that it started as a game, but then she actually started liking me. Said, "You're not the kind of guy I usually go for, but you're kind of ruining my system." I didn't know if that was supposed to be a compliment or an apology. I just stood there feeling like I was part of some twisted science fair. She kept talking. Said Jordan was convinced I was the classic guy who acts charming but flakes emotionally. Megan had picked me because she thought I'd be consistent and weirdly emotionally literate. It even made a scoring chart. Yes, a literal Google sheet where they track stuff like response time, openness, and emotional playbook accuracy. I asked if I could see it. She said no. I walked away that night without saying much. She texted me after like nothing happened. Said, I know it was messed up, but I really do like you. That part wasn't fake. I didn't respond. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I felt like I'd been tricked into a weird dating experiment, like a contestant on a reality show I didn't sign up for. I kept thinking back to every little moment, her laughing at my Spotify playlists, the fake debate about cereal brands, the voice notes where she asked if I believed in fate, and wondering how much of it was real, and how much was part of a win. That was Megan, the girl who turned dating into a challenge and used me as the scoreboard. I met Josh on a Sunday night after a painfully average day, laundry, overpriced groceries, and an argument with my microwave over whether my leftover noodles should still be cold in the middle. I was swiping out of habit more than hope when his profile came up. No shirtless pics, no car selfies, just a guy with a golden retriever and a tagline that said, 5 years sober, love long walks and people who overthink. I paused. Usually people who bring up being sober right away make me wonder if that's their entire personality. But with him, it felt different. Not performative, just factual. Like he wasn't hiding anything. I swiped right. He messaged the same night. Asked me what the worst movie I'd ever paid to see in a theater was. We got into a whole thing about bad reboots and how popcorn is a scam unless you drown it in fake butter. It was easy, fast, natural, no forced wide energy. Just two people who talked like they already had inside jokes. We met up that same week at this dog park cafe hybrid place he suggested. He brought his dog, Scout, who immediately knocked over my drink and then looked proud about it. I wasn't even mad. He was sweet, low-key hot in a cozy flannel kind of way, and talked with that calm voice that makes you think they've actually worked through stuff instead of pretending they're chill while internal screaming. Over the next month, it started feeling like a real thing. He told me he was court-ordered into rehab 5 years ago after a DUI. He didn't glamorize it or make it sound like a movie plot. He just laid it out. Said he made bad choices, got caught, got help, and stuck with it. I respected that. He was always on time, never on his phone during our dates, always walked me to my door, even when I said he didn't have to. He asked questions about my family, remembered my favorite bagel order, sent random voice notes when he saw a dog that looked like a loaf of bread. I started to feel safe, like actually safe. The kind of safe that makes your brain stop trying to detect traps. Then things started getting weird, but in ways that didn't immediately scream red flag. Just strange. He'd mention his probation officer kind of randomly, like it was no big deal. He'd say things like, yeah, I'm having a check-in with my PO this week. Nothing major. I didn't question it at first. I figured maybe he was still wrapping things up from his past. 5 years isn't that long in legal time, right? Then one day, I came over to his place and noticed a little black notebook on the counter. I asked what it was. He got this weird look on his face and said, just something I use to track goals. I let it go. Later that night, while he was in the bathroom, I peeked. I know, not proud. But something felt off and curiosity won. It wasn't a goal tracker. It was literally titled Sobriety Progress Log. Josh Peterson, PO check in evidence. There were detailed notes, dates, times, descriptions of our interactions. Things like took girlfriend to sober-friendly cafe. 1.5er is no alcohol in setting. Discussed emotional boundaries. And another, girlfriend stated she trusts me. Positive relational marker, no triggers. It hit me like a gut punch. He wasn't just dating me. He was documenting me, like a checkbox, like I was a tool in his progress chart. When he came out, I asked him point blank what it was. He didn't even deny it. He sighed and said, it's just part of showing I'm stable. You have no idea how hard it is to convince the system you're okay now. I said, what? A prop in your court report? He said, no, yes, but not like that. I chose you. I could have dated anyone, but I picked someone who made me feel healthy. That matters. I sat there completely stunned, because I believed he liked me. I still think he did, but it didn't matter. He wasn't dating me just because he wanted to get to know me. He was dating me to prove he could. To someone else, for paperwork. I wasn't part of his life. I was Evan's. I asked if his probation officer knew about me. He said yes, that he'd shown photos, notes. Even played one of my voicemails where I told him he seemed really grounded lately. He said it was a good emotional benchmark. I didn't even know what to say. I left that night without making a scene. Just walked home in total silence, trying to remember every moment and how much of it had been real. He texted the next morning and said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I really did like you. You weren't just a proof point." I didn't reply. I didn't block him. I just disappeared. A couple weeks later, I got a follow request from a new account that looked like his dog's page. I never accepted it, but the bio said, "On the path." Still good. That was Josh, the guy who dated me to show a judge he was stable, and maybe to prove it to himself too. But either way, I was never the person. I was the proof. Katie wasn't someone I thought I'd really vibe with at first. Her profile felt like a Pinterest board that came to life. Sunflower fields, perfectly lit coffee photos, a dog named Murphy, and one of those quotes that said something like, "Still figuring it out, but trying to do it kindly." I don't usually go for that aesthetic. Felt too curated. Like someone who definitely owns multiple essential oil diffusers and maybe a Himalayan salt lamp or two. But I've been on a run of matches who were either allergic to effort or exclusively into cryptocurrency, so I figured a little soft energy couldn't hurt. I swiped right mostly because her smile looked real, like in every photo. Not trying to pose, just smiling like someone said something funny and she didn't fake laugh, she actually cracked up. She messaged first, which I always respect. Said, "Your bio gave me emotionally aware, but probably scared of clown's energy." I don't even remember what I wrote back, but we ended up texting until midnight about everything from our mutual hatred of group texts to whether ketchup belongs on eggs. It was comfortable immediately. No weird flirting games, no trying to out-sarcasm each other. She asked good questions. Told me random stuff about her job. She worked in early childhood education, and her love-hate relationship with Sunday nights. Said she always felt a little sad after 7 p.m., like the weekend was slipping away too fast. Our first date was super chill. We met at this bakery that had those annoying little tables that make your knees touch even if you don't want them to. She brought me a muffin she claimed was life-changing, and to be honest, it kind of was. We sat there for 2 hours just talking. No awkward pauses, no pretending to like jazz music or whatever people do on first dates. It was like meeting someone you forgot you knew. Familiar but new. She walked with me in my car after, gave me a quick hug, and said this was nice, like really nice. It kept being nice. That's the word I kept using. Not explosive, not whirlwind, just nice. Easy. No stressed. She was consistent. She didn't ghost for 3 days just to be mysterious, and she didn't act like I owed her some grand gesture because we talked 3 nights in a row. She'd send me TikToks about raccoons stealing food and ask how my week was going. We'd have long conversations about whether people are more shaped by who they were at 7 or who they became at 17. Our second date was a bookstore. She wanted to show me a poetry section that made her cry once. She picked up a book and read me a random page like she was testing if I could handle her favorite sadness. I could. We left with nothing but still spent 45 minutes talking about how underrated good paper smells. By the third date, I was pretty into her. We went to dinner at this little family-run place where the tables wobble and the menu has no prices, which always makes me a little anxious. But she just rolled with it. Talked to the server like she'd been coming there for years. Told me about her parents, how they divorced quietly and nobody really talked about it until years later. How she had a little brother who still thinks she's the coolest person alive. Everything felt like it was heading somewhere. There was this calm momentum, like we weren't rushing, but we were definitely moving. I remember thinking, okay, this might actually be a person I build a life with. That thought scared me and excited me at the same time. And then nothing. I texted her the next day. No reply. Figured she was busy. Waited a day. Sent something else. Still nothing. Total silence. Vanished. No. Hey, I need space. No, this isn't working. Not even a weird emoji reaction to a meme. Just complete disappearance. And this was someone who used to text me goodnight. Who asked what kind of soup I liked when I said I was feeling sick. Gone. I did all the dumb things. Reread our conversations. Checked her social media. She hadn't posted anything. no clues. No dramatic goodbye post or cryptic story. It was like someone hit pause on her side of the screen and forgot to tell me the episode was over. I finally gave up after a week. Deleted her number. Told myself people are weird, life is chaotic, maybe something happened that had nothing to do with me. And then, about 2 weeks later, I was scrolling Instagram on my lunch break and saw something that made my stomach drop. It was a wedding photo. At first, I didn't even register it was her. She was tagged in someone else's post, one of those congrats to the beautiful bride things. I clicked. There she was, Katie. White dress, flowers, standing next to some dude I'd never seen before, both of them looking painfully in love. The post was dated just 4 days after our last date. I thought I was going to throw my phone. There were more photos, a whole album, bridesmaids, cake, first dance, some comment from her cousin that said, "Katie, you made the right choice." Right choice. That phrase stuck with me. Made me feel like I was part of a multiple choice test she'd filled out. I was answer C, and she hovered over it for a second before going with A. I sat there, phone in hand, replaying our last date, her laugh, the way she looked at me when I said something dumb but sincere, and realizing it was all part of her final check. I was the test. The last little emotional detour to make sure she was picking the right road. I wasn't a mistake. I was a form of reassurance. A practice round before she said I do. I never messaged her. What would I say? Congrats on your lifelong commitment. Just wanted to say thanks for using me as your emotional control group. Nah, I just closed the app and didn't open it for days. And the wild part is, I don't even think she's a terrible person. I think she panicked. Needed one last jolt of doubt. Needed to be sure. And I just happened to be available, open, and not awful. So she ran her test, got her answer, and moved on. That was Katie. Beautiful, thoughtful, soft-spoken, and already halfway down the aisle when we kissed in the parking lot that night.